Hey everybody, we're going to get started now. Hello there in TV land. We have our online members also participating there. Today's a special day. I try each semester at least once to have professionals who actually apply machine learning and AI in finance come and speak to us. Today we're fortunate to have a team from SunTrust who is headquartered here in Atlanta to tell us some of the things they do with finance, using these, some of the same tools we're learning here. Also be advised that they are looking to hire potentially both full-time folks and interns. So pay attention, take down their email addresses. During the presentations, they've said that they're willing to answer questions along the way. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and ask. One thing for SunTrust team, repeat the question because the people online aren't necessarily going to have heard it. So repeat it. Also, sometimes if someone's up front, the people in the back can't hear, so we'll get the question. Anyways, let me start off by inviting Bob Popowski to come up and give us an overview of what we're going to hear from SunTrust.
So good afternoon. My name is Bob Popowski. What I do within SunTrust is I'm responsible for sales, trading, and research in the investment bank. So when you think about the investment process, we'll talk a little bit about that today. We help facilitate investors investing in securities, right? And how we apply machine learning, AI, algorithmic tools is a little bit of a different version of what and how a traditional investment management company, hedge fund may do that. So we can talk about how it's different as well. Along with me, I have Jeff Hughes, who's responsible for equity research. I'll talk briefly about 3 things that we're doing, thinking about doing. He'll be talking about one of those 3 things in greater detail. As well, we have Anand Swathamurthy, who's responsible for data and analytics, AI machine learning within the consumer bank. And we have John Marmolino, who is responsible for risk and analytics within the bank itself. And so I'll briefly touch on 3 things and I'll pass it off. So feel free to interrupt me with questions along the way. 3 main bodies of work exist within investment banks at the moment, including SunTrust Robinson Humphrey. First is trade identification. Okay, so if you think about what a dealer is a market maker who is trying to buy and sell securities. Some of them they own, some of them they don't own. Some of these markets are not liquid. So if you come to me and you ask me to buy a specific security that I do not own, it would be really useful for me as a salesperson or as a trader to quickly identify something that has similar characteristics that may fit the needs of the client. Machine learning and analytics will be able to and do analyze behaviors of individuals at companies, of companies themselves, and the predictive analytics that we can deploy to determine whether or not a transaction is a suitable fit could in fact make a transaction happen between us at the investment bank and that client, as opposed to them calling another investment bank away from us. So trade identification is a big and important field that's fairly new. If you think about it, it's kind of what Amazon does in a different application. Trade execution. Traditionally, trade execution within investment bank in the sales and trading group has been identified throughout, right? Identify factors that could be quickly analyzed to produce a price with or without human intervention. That's been around for a long time. What's changing is the analytical power that's available through cloud computing and other computing services that allow for the machines to start to learn how to enhance the algorithms independently of human intervention. So trade, to think about it more broadly, trade algorithms that start to use machine learning to determine and optimize the business model itself, the algorithmic model itself. And then lastly, research. A large part of what investment banks do, and we're no different, is spend a lot of time analyzing companies, analyzing markets. And in order to do that, you need a data science program behind you that supports all three disciplines I just talked about. And we are embarking on a data science project, which Jeff will talk about. What I would say, more broadly speaking, having grown up, I was originally a science major and then changed to finance. I wish I stayed in science because the market is coming your way. A lot of what we're going to be working on, and I believe a lot of the future leaders, not only STRH, but broadly speaking, investment banks, are going to have your backgrounds, right? So the more you can focus on programming and understanding finance, the more applicable you're going to be to how we're trying to develop our company and how the market is trying to recruit talent as well. So I'll answer any questions throughout the day, but I don't want to take Jeff's time, so I'll pass it off to Jeff so he can talk a little bit more about data science as it relates to equity research. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be Georgia Tech's campus. You definitely sense the vibrancy, packed room. It's great to be here at campus. As Bob mentioned, my name is Jeff Utes. I run equity research at SunTrust Robinson Humphrey. Quick background before I get into talking about how we and the sell side is using data and analytics to provide value, add value to the buy side. I've been at SunTrust Robinson Humphrey for 5 years. I've been director of equity research in that capacity. Before joining SunTrust Robinson Humphrey, I spent 15 years at a global investment bank, spending time in New York as well as Chicago. Before that, I was received my MBA at the Fuqua School of Business at Duke. And before that, I spent 7 years in corporate banking in Chicago, and I received my undergrad at the University of Notre Dame. As Bob mentioned, I think 20 years from now, maybe even 10 years from now, maybe 7 years from now, the background of the directors of equity research will have backgrounds like yours, not mine. So this is very relevant, I think, and the opportunities for in this career for folks with your background are significant and substantial. Before I get started and talking a little bit about analytics, I want to just give everyone a little background on our industry, the securities industry. And there are a lot of terms that are thrown around: buy side, sell side, issuers, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands some of the basics here. On the sell side, we're talking about broker dealers, i.e. investment banks, SunTrust Robinson Humphrey, for example. Other firms you've probably heard of: Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP. We're sell-siders, and we provide information and trading execution to our clients on the buy side. So on the buy side, that's institutional investors that are clients of ours, and that includes long-only complexes, asset management complexes like American Century, Waddell & Reed, Wellington, Fidelity, names you're probably familiar with. Also includes increasingly hedge funds, number of names that you're probably familiar with: Citadel, Surveyor, Bridgewater, for example. Ray Dalio was on TNBC this morning, if anyone caught that. And also pension funds and endowment funds that are considered institutional investors on the buy side. And then lastly, issuers. They're publicly traded companies that we might cover. There are about 3,700 publicly traded companies on U.S. stock exchanges right. Moving on, what is a sell side analyst do? In our research department, we have about 100 teammates and about 40 publishing equity research analysts covering a variety of industries, from TMT to financials to consumer to industrials to energy, you name it. They cover verticals, sub-verticals, etc. They really wear a number of different hats. One is a consultant, serve as an industry expert on typically 10 to 30 companies under coverage. At SunTrust, Robinson, Humphrey, our 40 analysts on average cover about 20 stocks. And they serve as really portfolio consultants to our clients on the buy side. They provide information to clients to help them make better investment decisions. They also serve as financial analysts. They build multi-year forecasts, establish earnings estimates, sales estimates, and those can be extremely helpful to the buy side. We'll also do fundamental channel check research, which is extremely important. The job has really changed pretty dramatically from being a reporter of earnings previews and reviews to really doing more value-added work now. Our research analysts are on the road an awful lot. They spend a lot of time doing proprietary research, attending conferences, also taking our companies, the companies that we cover, on the road to see institutional investors as well. So the job is changing. I referenced that earlier. The job of a research analyst used to be focused on publishing earnings previews and earnings recaps, and that's really become commoditized. The real value added now is coming up with quantitative, differentiated, proprietary work that the buy side will pay for. Increasingly, the buy side won't pay for earnings recaps because there's very little value add. You can see on this graph here that the amount of money that our clients are spending on data has been growing astronomically. 168 million on data just 2 years ago, 400 million this year, and the outlook for data spending going forward is very robust. When we talk about alternative data, I want to make sure everyone's kind of clear on this. How the buy side is using it. Generally defined, alternative data is independent data. It does not come directly from the companies that we cover. It basically is information that helps the buy side understand insights on the income statement, specifically revenues as well as margins, or coming up with earnings per share estimates. And there are all kinds of alternative data, as I've spelled out here. Some of the data is stuff you're probably familiar with: credit card data, satellite imaging, social media data, online product reviews, search patterns on popular word searches. And you'll see in the bottom pie graph there, alternate data some alternate data is considered more accurate than others. Specifically, credit card data is very valued information, as is web scraping data. So how is data analytics used in the research process? Really 2 ways. Number one is data management, and the second item is advanced analytics. Data management, you have to obtain the data first, extract it. It can come from labor-intensive web scraping, or you can buy the data from third-party data providers. And the second thing here, data cleansing, very, very important, and this is probably the most difficult, most value-added element here on this page. And the reason for that is most of the data, many experts say that the data is really not usable. And why is that? You might have time series that are wrong. You might have differing years of data. Questions about, can you normalize the data? Can you back test the data? Can you use some statistical tools to assess if the data is good or bad? That's very, very important. And the buy side and the sell side spend a lot of time to try to clean the data. Once you clean the data, the next part is making the data presentable. And then a number of tools are used, advanced analytics are used to test, to run hypotheses. You've got scenario analysis and simulation, correlation analysis that's used, and machine learning for pattern recognition, regression analysis, etc. Now, the next slide here shows the big picture, how we use data analytics. We use it to improve the quality of our research, to focus more on higher value added work, such as deep dive thematic pieces, differentiated real research, really moving away from what I described earlier as the commoditized research product, which is just reporting and is not valued by our clients on the buy side. We also use it as a tool to help us be more efficient. It allows us to cover more stocks. Lastly, to become more client-centric. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot more money being spent on data by the buy side. Essentially every type of client, whether you're a small cap manager or a large cap manager or a long-only asset manager with a 3-year plus time horizon or a hedge fund with a 2-week time horizon, you want more data. Here's some examples. On the next few slides, I've got some examples of analytics and specific verticals that we'll talk about. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but you can take a look at these online and see some of the applications and how they're used. Within the consumer space, we have an analyst right now who covers cruise lines, and he scrapes cruise line data from websites, from either travel agency websites or directly from the cruise lines. And he finds changes in pricing to be very effective in understanding the trends in top line. That's been very well received by the buy side. There are also analysts on the street who check inventory on some websites like AutoNation or Carvana. They'll check them on a weekly basis and look at the SKUs, the vehicle identification numbers, to identify how a product is moving, if it's moving quickly, is it being discounted aggressively, et cetera. And that can be very helpful with regard to identifying near-term trends. Also on social media sites, there are folks that use a lot of tools to quantify reviews on social media sites, and that can be very valuable as well. Other verticals in healthcare, you look at trends in advertising and the correlation between drug spending to come up with sales projections. Also on currently approved drugs and non-approved drugs, looking at comparative profiles, product descriptions, and the related companies to try to formulate what the top line might look like if it mirrors a competitive product, to come up with kind of peak revenue and sustainable revenues going forward. Also within the PMP vertical, there's a lot of technology tools that are being used. I mentioned earlier scraping pricing data. You can see a couple examples there cited. Google Trends, search word analysis, a lot of reviews on websites, etc. And then oil and gas is another energy sector. There's a lot of analytical tools that are used to scrape data, to find alternative data, and come up with unique insights. So how are we currently using data and analytics, and how will be used in the future? We have a REIT analyst, real estate investment trust analyst, named Keeban Kim. And Keeban puts out a quarterly piece called The Key to Self-Storage. He covers a number of publicly traded self-storage companies, REIT companies, and he goes through 300 self-storage units in order to come up with pricing trends and promotion. This has been very predictive with regard to understanding near-term trends, and it's basically must reading for anyone that invests in the self-storage space right now, Keeban Kim's work. Our restaurant analyst, Jake Bartlett, manually reviews pricing items on a number of websites in the fast casual and casual restaurant space, such as like a Gardens or Dave & Buster's, coming up with unique insights on pricing that's been very valuable to the buy side. Our leisure analyst, who covers theme parks and golf manufacturing equipment, as well as boat manufacturers. Mike Schwartz does proprietary work on understanding the monthly, how new product especially is tracking, and we use a lot of data analytics to come up with some identified trends in pricing and on the top line. In the future, we want to use some tools to help us in a couple other verticals, specifically energy, as well as aerospace. There are a number of government websites that we can access and use some tools to help us accumulate data on, for example, on a county basis, how wells are, the productivity on certain wells in certain counties in, say, Texas. And same thing with aerospace and defense data points from government websites. There's a current use example that's pretty neat. About 3 or 4 months ago, our internet analyst, Yusuf Scully, came out with a report really focusing on Amazon and specifically their private label business, clothing specifically. We looked at SKUs offered by Amazon as well as competitive brands from Calvin Klein and some other competitors, and looked at pricing data on each brand. What Yusuf concluded is that Amazon's private label brands have tremendous opportunity to continue to gain share based on customer reviews and the Amazon private label brand versus other competing brands. This is going to be a source of upside, we think, for Amazon in the near term and longer term. There's been a great call. We got a lot of publicity on this one. It was highlighted in the New York Times Sunday edition on June 24th. And Amazon stock's up about 15% since we published this data. It was one of our most widely read pieces of research over the last year. So in conclusion, the times are really changing in equity research on the buy side as well as the sell side. The days of sell side research analysts relying on quarterly previews and reviews to do primary research, the buy side just won't pay for that anymore. The buy side is demanding more proprietary, creative, and quantitative research from the sell side. And technology advancements are creating a tremendous amount of opportunity here for us to add value to really come up with key proprietary insights to offer to the buy side. The holy grail is taking the expertise, the experience of our analysts, combine it with the technology tools that are in place right now and are continuing to evolve. The power of the data, as well as the combining it with the intellectual capabilities of our analysts, is really where the holy grail is with regards to how the buy side's using sell-side research going forward. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
One over there.
Sure.
I was wondering about like the process, how you look at a given company in the sector and determining in the end which kind of data sources are relevant for making any valuable predictions. If there's like, that's more of a scientific process or if it's more like an art.
So the question is, when you're looking at companies, how do we assess what data sources will be valuable? Is that kind of the gist of the question?
Yes.
So that's a very good question. And it really comes down to, our analysts all have quite a bit of experience and are industry experts understanding what the key drivers are with regard to the top line I mentioned, impact on the business model. And a lot of it is just having an understanding, being an industry expert and understanding what will drive those key variables. Give you an example. There are some third-party data providers who will give you parking lot data. So if you have a consumer analyst who covers Home Depot or Lowe's, for example, Home Depot or a company, there are entities out there that will provide parking lot data, satellite feeds, to give you an understanding of how busy the parking lot is specifically on weekends, because that's when the majority of sales occurs for these two companies. And you can have a greater understanding of the weather impact, for example. If there's been a particularly dismal weather in the spring, that can have an adverse impact on traffic for Home Depot, specifically in the garden area of Home Depot. And that can really drive near-term results for a Home Depot or a Lowe's. So that's one example. It's really having an understanding of what's driving the underlying metrics that are most important. It might be same-store sales comps in a retail environment. It might be foot traffic. It really depends on the specific industry, specific company.
Can I
Please.
So what I might say is on top of that, so I think the answer is it can be both. We're starting to develop on the thesis it can be both. That we want the expertise of the fundamental analysts to tell us if they think are interesting, and then we try to find better ways to access data or more unique data sets that maybe do a couple layers below that. But then there's also the discipline of finding unique data sets and patterns, things that we didn't think were correlated to a particular stock. right? And that's the initiative that we're starting to kick off in 2019. So I think you can approach it from a data science perspective, and that can inform an equity fundamental research analyst. And then you can take equity fundamental research and you can find better patterns and data sets around the things they care about, right? A lot of firms are setting up, firms being investment banks, setting up subsidiaries around the thesis that you can create unique data sets that go into the revenue graph that Jeff showed earlier. Right? I think that's probably a fair assessment of the capacity to both empower the 40 analysts that we have, but also create a new discipline and a new product that could be sold into the buy side as well.
Tucker?
Sure. Well, I didn't mean to take precedence over.
Sorry, well, at the same time.
Okay, imagine a fresh Georgia Tech graduate, completes this course, starts work at SunTrust. Where would you imagine they would plug in here? So, for instance, would they be paired with an analyst and do studies for them? Would they be an analyst, or how does that work?
The answer to that question is that there's plenty of opportunities in SunTrust Robinson Humphrey. Yes, you could come in and work with one of our industry experts, but Bob referenced a new investment that SunTrust Robinson Humphrey is making in data analytics and data science. We are building a data science team. We're in the process of trying to hire a data scientist right now, and then we'll be building a team around that person. So there would be great opportunities there to come in and work with our data scientists. We're interviewing folks right now actually for that senior level position. So there's plenty of opportunities. And I truly do believe that 10 years from now, 12 years from now, next DOR will have some quantitative experience like you all out. Question in the back?
Thank you. What databases are y'all using to store your data? Are you using something centralized? Second, what specific tools you are using for advanced analytics, specific languages you like to play in, visualization packages? And third is, how big is the SunTrust Robinson Humphrey team right now?
How big is SunTrust?
Robinson Humphrey specifically.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So the question is, what data sets are we using right now?
Database.
Pardon me? Database?
Databases. Yeah.
Databases. What kind of analytical tools are we using right now? And then the size of SunTrust Robinson Humphrey. Let me start with the last one, which is the easiest for someone who doesn't have a quant background. SunTrust Robinson Humphrey is about $2 billion in revenues, roughly, right? Our investment bank, the investment bank subsidiary of SunTrust Bank. And Bob can probably, if you want to expand a little bit more.
So we're, so there's, the investment bank is about 1,160 people. Sales and trading is about 360 of that. Equity research is about 100 of that. The data analytics team I have is about 7 people at the moment. That's going to continue to grow, right? It's a fairly new initiative for us. There are a few databases, one is centrally owned. The nice thing about being associated with a bank, and we have 2 other colleagues who will come up and speak, is that there's a lot of infrastructure that's available in shared services. So there's a data lake that's available for big data and analytics around the data lake. We happen to call it Atlas. That's a recent initiative that was stood up within SunTrust Bank itself. So I get billed. Nothing's for free in life, but I have the ability to access tools. Primarily equity research analysts, and generally speaking, the QCF folks that we have, most of them have actually come from this college, are focused on Python and R and analytics around it. Right? But we're in very early stages, as Jeff mentioned, with building out a data science team. I think that's, to me, an exciting thing, right? That a lot of opportunity is available when you're starting something new around the investment bank. I grew up in an investment bank that was very small and became very big. We became B of A. And so when I think about my career, it's aligning yourselves with the right firm, given the infrastructure they have, where you think you can take incremental steps. Just building off of Jeff's comment, and I do want to turn over to the other teammates. What does a fundamental research analyst have? They have C-suite relationships, which you don't have, and they have industry expertise, which you don't have. What's their biggest fear? Data and analytics. Because they know that that's important to how they're going to continue to be relevant. Why? because the C-suite at the firms that we research are spending a lot of money on data analytics themselves. And so if you can't converse in a meaningful way and collaborate, you're going to start to become less and less relevant to the C-suite of research companies that we focus on. So they need help. And that's my job, is to try to find the resources available. That's why we're talking to you guys. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, very
Good. So let's turn it over to Anna, if that's okay, so we can get another flavor for how we're using that inside the bank.
There. My name is Anand, and I lead our consumer data and analytics office. I'm here to tell you about, I took this job only a couple of months back. I was debating to myself, like, should I talk to you about the areas where we do machine learning? Should I talk to you about how the retail industry, I work for the consumer bank, so it's kind of part of retail bank, how the retail industry itself can use machine learning. This is something I've been discussing with my leadership, so I thought I would start with that and give you more of an industry perspective rather than specific areas where we're using machine learning. There was a question about how big STRH is. I'll start with how big the consumer bank is. We are about 6 billion in revenues. We have a 76 billion portfolio in loans. About the asset under management is about 65 billion. These are big numbers. Deposits are 110, 115 billion, give or take. Consumer bank by itself could be a Fortune 500 company. It's a huge part of the bank, not just because the revenues are big, the deposits for, how many of you bank with SunTrust? All right. Thank you. Your deposits are the big reason that we run other parts of the bank, wholesale bank, investment bank, low data, right? Deposits are lifeblood for the bank. So if you move on, this is a statistic from Wall Street Journal. I'm not going to share anything, this material, non-public. So this is from Wall Street Journal. How many of you are banked with the top 3 banks in the United States? JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. Quite a few. Yeah. All of you have given an incremental deposit of 118 billion in 2017. Last year alone, BFA, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo got an incremental deposits of 118 billion, just lifeblood of the bank. Any bank, cheap funding, right? Regional banks, that includes SunTrust, BB&T, PNC, Cap One, M&T, 22 regional banks together. Guess how much deposits they got in 2017 together? People, make a guess.
It looks like negative, if I understand your chart.
This is not so good. 100 million? 100 billion?
million.
Billion? Oh, that's too low.
Half a billion,
That will sink my heart.
half a billion.
Half a billion? 55 billion. So the 55 billion, 118 billion, the divide is getting larger and larger and larger. That is something to scale, right? Bigger the bank, bigger the deposit growth. Seems like that, right? So I kind of think, how many of you think Google, Amazon, and Facebook, these kind of companies are going to rule the world? All right, quite a few. I disagree with that notion, by the way. I'll tell you why. In a minute. Traditional banking model is being redefined. I've told you about how the traditional analysts is paired with data scientists. They could be better together. We have proven the humanity, right? So man or women, human plus machine together is better than human or machine. We are in this hybrid land today. Traditional banking has been redefined. How many of you have investment accounts? How many of you have made more than 100 trades in the past 1 year? two. JP Morgan made all their investment accounts free if you're making less than 100 trades. 99% of the class will do free trades in JP Morgan if you have an investment account there. I went back and checked how many trades I made last year, 37. I'll be okay with JP Morgan. Doesn't have to pay any fee. A lot of different business models are coming. So you have to be, so the way you have to pay something, right? Either you pay with your money, which you do for other banks, but if you use JP Morgan, you pay with your data. Right? A lot of subscription models are out there. JP Morgan wants to tie to like a Netflix-like subscription model. They want you all. Here is another thing that is also a problem with the traditional bank. This is JP Morgan's offering Sapphire Bank, right? You have to be 75. You have to have 75,000 in your deposit account or investment account, total investable assets, to access their private wealth. They have lowered the bar. This is going to change the industry. In SunTrust, for all these services, you need a minimum of $100,000 in investable assets, or in some cases, $1 million or more in investable assets. We lowered the bar. I think it is still flawed. If I am not having 75,000 with them, but I'm really a high net worth guy or a gal, they wouldn't know me. So most of the industry is going with rules, not with an adaptive machine learning type approach to implement their strategies. This is a challenge that I pose to my leadership in my group in consumer. What can we learn from other industries, right? So some of you think Google or Amazon can rule the world. I disagree. Here is why. If you look at pharma industry, right? You look at the list of all these companies. These are huge companies: Johnson & Johnson, Roche, Pfizer, Novartis, Bayer. All of them have more than 100 years of history. They have weathered so much. They have weathered the Great Depression, world wars. They're still dominating the market, right? All these companies started with organic chemistry, aspirin, a lot of drugs like that. Then they migrated to microbiology, vaccines, insulin, antibiotics, and all that, right? And then now they are into genomics. They have a core of research and development, right? That's their core. They pivot from one market discipline to another discipline, another knowledge discipline to another knowledge discipline, from organic chemistry to microbiology to genomics. When it comes to banks, can you use the same template? I think it is yes. The consumer bank, especially, is the knowledge about the client. If I go to a village somewhere, the teller knows who is coming in. The baker comes in, the teller knows whether the baker has what kind of family they have, is the kid going to school, and all that. It's like a localized knowledge, right? The knowledge of the client. Is that a way to use that and treat the client differently? Create a differentiated client experience, regardless of how much you want. It's not like you have a 75,000, I'll treat you in one way, 100,000, million, I'll treat another way. That's old school. That's not going to work. So if you use that kind of the same template, for centuries, banks really thrived on intermediation. Somebody wanted money, somebody has excess money. Banks are in between, right? Call it loans, call it capital markets. It's intermediation. Worked very well for centuries. Somebody in Colombia made a research and found out the capital market type fee remains in the 2 to 7% range for centuries, like from 1600s, from the British East India Company onwards. Worked very well. Then access became a big part. Do you know who said this? The greatest invention the banking has done in the past 50 or 60 years is ATM. He was the chairman of Fed. Greenspan, no, Greenspan would never say that. Paul Volcker said that, which is true. The access to the money, 24/7 access to the money, then like from intermediation to access. Today, it is client centricity. Anybody who can do well in client centricity can do really, really well. So what does client centricity actually mean? 90% of Americans live 20 miles from their nearest Walmart. 90%, right? When I go to Walmart, get a shaving cream, shave my head, like socks, a t-shirt, or anything like that, right? Walmart treats me as a way to push inventory out, clear inventory sales. Banks are very similar. They'll sell you a money market account, deposit account, credit cards, HELOCs, mortgages, any of those sorts, right? If I go to Amazon.com, it's all client-centric. My landing page is very different from yours, very different from yours. It's all client-centric. So the knowledge discipline that could take us into client centricity is machine learning and analytics. Right? Here is another example of how this analytics can differentiate us in the marketplace. You all take investment course. I'm going to give you this is the question. These companies, there are two different companies in here, blue and in red, right? Both have very similar market cap. Right? One has 150, 164. What companies are those? They are in the same industry. Make a guess. Another clue here.
Tesla and Ford.
Tesla and Ford, very close. I mean, I like your thinking where you're going, but it's similar. Any guess? Look at the employees. Number of employees. Look at the PE. There is some clue.
Salesforce,
Salesforce?
and something else.
Close, but not quite right. I'll give you an example. They are in entertainment industry.
Walt Disney and
There you go. Netflix and Walt Disney. So why would Netflix have this PE, whereas Walt Disney is this much?
I can't quite see it. What is it for Netflix? The PE?
148
Oh, geez.
versus, yeah.
So we haven't gotten to PE yet in the course, but tell them for a moment what that is, so they.
So that's a multiple the market pays. So market pays 150 times more from the earnings of Netflix versus 15 times more. You could look it up. You'll get better explanation.
So if they earn $1 a year, there's $42. And by the way, that's an outrageously large number.
Outrageously large number, right? In any way, it's outrageously large number. How do you really substantiate something? Even if you give this recommendation, you come up with some numbers, okay, run algorithms, go and give this to Jeff or Bob, then they even laugh at you. Why would you give this? Does it really make sense? To me, it makes sense. Only one reason. Disney. Disney owns Lucasfilms, Disney owns Pixar, Disney owns Marvel. They have all these assets, massive assets. How many of you are Disney fans? Many of us, right? Come on. How many have Netflix accounts? Disney has all these assets. But when I go see a movie in a neighborhood AMC theater, right? I'm an AMC customer, not a Disney customer. If I buy, he's 10 years old, so whatever, he calls himself a young adult, so I have to find something which really suits him. So I find something, I get it. I'm a Target client or a Walmart client, wherever I buy the toy. Disney has lost the sight of their client. They accumulated the assets, they don't have client centricity. They cannot use machine learning and analytics like Netflix does. Netflix has all our eyeballs. They know what we watch, what we don't watch, how much we pause, how much we repeat, all that, right? What is the use of all that? Netflix was a DVD mailing company not long before, when you were like kids, right? So I was in grad school. Then they pivoted themselves and went for streaming, and then now they have 10% of Hollywood production budget. From zero 10 years back to 10%, almost 10% of the Hollywood production budget. That comes with client centricity. They could produce something and put out there with confidence that Hollywood cannot do. Hollywood economics is like a term you must have heard, right? You put something out there and pray for it clicks. Many companies push products like with Hollywood economics. They will come up with some kind of a business plan or sort, which is essentially Hollywood economics. Not Netflix. It doesn't have to. So client centricity is a theme for SunTrust and many other banks. And the more we do, and better we do on client centricity, I think we are going to win. My bank is going to be very different from my bank. And the bank of the future is going to use analytics, is going to use machine learning much more in an effective way that could give client centricity. When I walk in or take my mobile app and launch the app, the bank will know me much better, just like the village teller, 20 years of experience, knows the community. That much knowledge will be packed. And the only way we could pack that is through analytics and machine learning. Right? Before I start, I wanted to show something real quick, a couple of minutes of video. How many of you have heard a company called DataRobot? Few of those, right? So the reason I'm going to play this is you're going to learn a lot about machine learning and how to do machine learning. Over the period of time, it's irrelevant. Controversial thing, I have to say. Because artificial intelligence is going to automate many of those. Right? So this is a company I visited like a year back. Fascinated. We're going to do some experiments with them. I'll play this and then talk about it.
DataRobot is an automated machine learning platform that helps you solve business problems by finding the best predictive model for your data. An incredibly clean interface allows analysts, developers, and data professionals to rapidly build highly accurate predictive models, embedding the best practices of the world's top data scientists into every model they build. Massively parallel processing allows users to build many models at once, so the work that used to take weeks now happens in an afternoon. Instead of guessing which model will work for any given data set, DataRobot systematically compares models built with Python scikit-learn, R, Spark, H2O, ValPal-Webic, TensorFlow, and others. Models are described with incredible transparency, and DataRobot uses novel techniques to extract deep insights from each and every one.
No, you can't use this for your homework.
From months to minutes by generating a simple, elegant, one-line API code at the touch of a button. With DataRobot, you can deliver predictive analytics and insights to your business in hours instead of months. DataRobot, the world's most advanced machine learning platform for accurate predictive modeling made easy, fast, and powerful.
So there's a saying, right? With all the getting, get understanding. A lot of wisdom to it. Jeff talked about the data sets, aggregating all those data sets and making sense, like in a way that you could influence people with kind of clear logic. It will be worth much more than working on techniques. So there is a story from, you must have heard this. The monk is passing to a village and he sees a couple of folks stacking stones, right, at the outskirts of the village. So he's asking one of them, hey, what are you doing? He says, oh, can't you see? I'm just stacking stones. So he passes 10 meters, 20 meters. There is other guy carrying the stones, and he's asking the same question. Hey, what are you doing? The other guy says, oh, we are building this beautiful cathedral. This is going to be the biggest church in the village. And he gives a lot of information about it. Machine learning analytics is like stacking stones, right? What you do with it is much more important than how you do it. So if you are looking for you are all very bright, I think the thing that will differentiate you in the marketplace and will give you a lot of fulfillment in your career is when you build the cathedral. And I know you will all do it. That's all. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
So I'm banking with JP Morgan because it has presence everywhere. Even though I'm in Atlanta right now, I
Yes.
know tomorrow I'll move to different states, and I want my bank to be present in that state, and I don't want to have 2-3 bank accounts. So how do you think SunTrust will be able to compete with that in future? So tomorrow there will be mobile banking because of that. The presence of the bank, whether there is a branch or ATM in there, would it matter? Or do you think expanding branches in various locations would be more helpful?
The question is, I want to bank with a bank which has presence in all states, not with a regional bank which is localized. What do you think tomorrow is going to be? Okay. So tomorrow, the definition of bank will change. You think probably of branches and signage. You'll probably think of a mobile app tomorrow. There are a lot of, how many of you are from Europe? Do you bank with the N26, Monzo, any of the internet-only banks? It's catching up really quick. So the notion of what bank is will change, and you will be able to identify with an entity that would manage your finances in a very different way, but just with technology rather than the physical structure. That's my crystal ball. Any other questions? Yes.
You highlighted the resilience of these pharma companies, and I wonder if that's because that product that they're creating is more essential, or it's perceived to be. You see banking to be perceived similarly as an essential thing, or does that allow some flexibility in how fast you catch up with technology trends?
So the question is, we talked about banking and pharma and financial services. Pharma is very essential. If you don't take your drug, you die. Financial services can you equate, or what is the relationship, right? Is it the same? How many of you want to have a life that is that's out of poverty? How many of you don't want to suffer from poverty? How many of you want to buy a car? How many of you want to buy your dinner tonight? Right. So when you think of bank, you don't think of all these. Essentially, financial services enables this and much more. It's fundamental to a society that wants to make progress. Whether the bank of today can do this well is a test for tomorrow. The bank of the future is going to do it much better than. And we want to be the bank of the future. By the way, just like Bob's team is hiring, my team is hiring. That's my shameless pitch. Thank you.
My name is John Marmolino. I represent the Risk and Finance Data and Analytics Office. So I unfortunately don't have a slide or interesting presentation to show you. But what my area does is it manages data foundation, the analytics capabilities that SunTrust uses to manage its risk and its financial performance. that has a fairly wide distribution of use cases where machine learning can come into play. So one microcosm of my space is financial crimes. So within the financial crime space, we are monitoring for money laundering, human trafficking, terrorist financing, and then fraud, identity theft. Each one of those traditionally has presented different challenges for banks. To some extent, the old way of managing these things were to create traps for behaviors. So look for new accounts, look for accounts that were opened out of state, look for accounts with multiple cash deposits, look for accounts that have frequently changes address. But the problem with any of those methods is those traps pretty quickly become obsolete. The criminals and the people who are intending to do harm to us are pretty quick at adapting and finding those traps. And then they operate in a way that's slightly outside of the capability of the rules to find them. Machine learning is truly an area where banks are starting to move into the forefront with machine learning, to create opportunities to bring lots of data together in a way that can be utilized to manage active threats and an ever-changing method of committing fraud or laundering money or financing terrorism. But within our space, we have opportunities to develop machine learning models that can deal with almost every aspect of it. So one of them, I'm going to go very micro. I know these guys say very high level. I'm going to go very micro. Common problem that banks face is third-party check fraud. So what that means is you, as a SunTrust client, are presented with a check from outside of SunTrust. So it's not a SunTrust check. It could be Bank of America, it could be Bank of China, it could be anybody. They write a check, they present it to us. We have to, per law, make an assessment very quickly, within 24 hours really, to determine whether your check needs to be held or whether we need to make those funds available to you immediately. To do that, we need to bring together a vast amount of information. We need to understand who you are, what is your routine types of activities. Is this outside of the norm for you? Are you likely to be committing fraud at SunTrust? But above that, I know you, I like you, I trust you. Do I know the other guy? Do I know the guy who wrote you the check? Do I know the institution the check was written from? That requires us to bring in to play information that could be provided by a third party. It could be other information that we house across the organization. It could be on lists, watch lists that we've accumulated, watch lists that we purchased. And we bring all of that information to bear to determine whether or not there's a probability of fraud on that check. That presents a whole new host of problems that banks haven't typically been able to deal with. In the past, the way we would deal with it is we would just hold all checks. So if was presented by a third-party check. The traditional way to handle that was we just wouldn't cash the check until the other bank made good on the check, deposited their funds into our accounts. We felt that it was pretty safe to now make those funds available to you. But the world is changing. One, the clients won't stand for it. But two, the regulators won't allow it. So in this case, we're bringing together data sets from a vast amount of sources. So in some cases, structured data, where we're looking at things like your account balances, what your address is, unstructured data, where we're pulling information out of your social media in order to ensure that we're managing the risk appropriately. The key to this, when you think about it, is really the application. So while it's very specific to a one use case for SunTrust, the techniques and the capabilities that this provides to us is actually utilized, it could be utilized by many different uses. So when Anand talks to you about clients' interest in knowing your client, there's an extremely valuable proposition to SunTrust to make sure that we're offering you the best products and services. And he will go about doing that for his purposes. But the same techniques that he's going to need to do that, to know who his clients are, what the probabilities of his clients are, to take an offer, what his clients need, is going to be the same types of activities and techniques that we need to do to monitor fraud or to monitor risk for the client. You had an earlier question as to whether or not a branch physical location matters, right? So JP Morgan is located in lots of places. Bank of America, similarly. Does that matter? And the reality is the physical location of less and less important. We're moving to a point where the client expects its financial institutions to be available to it when it needs it. And that isn't tomorrow morning between the hours of 9 and 4 p.m. That's whenever the client needs it. So you see the advent of things like Venmo, PayPal, capabilities to move money around very quickly. You've seen the advent of more mobile applications for trading so that clients can trade. I've worked with SunTrust for 13 years, and every day when I walk into the office, I pass a branch, a SunTrust branch is within our physical building. I've been in that branch probably 10 times in 13 years, and most of the time it's because I need to make change. Most people don't need physical locations to bank. And so the relevancy of our institution is our ability to make SunTrust available to you as a client when you need it. Now that has implications on the risk space, because what that means is I can't risk review your loan application as you present it. By the time you're ready to apply for a loan, you probably have already decided you need the loan, you want the money now, and you're probably in a place where you want to make a purchase. So if you think about the way you handle car purchases, for example, you walk into a dealership, you don't have financing likely, you probably don't have enough money to buy the car immediately, but you walk into a branch or into a dealership and you say, oh, that car, yeah, how much do you pay? How much do you want the payments to be? And then you go to a finance office and they'll do your risk rating. The future of banking will be, you have been risk rated as a client every single day. And every time you do something through the bank, or really anything that we capture or we monitor, updates your risk profile. And then we make available to you the services and offerings based on the risk profile you present to us. That's the future of banking. That's where banking will be in the future. And so we will continue to be relevant if we are able to adapt. The banks that are able to adapt can make the financial institutions available to you at the time you need to transact. Those are going to be the banks that will survive. SunTrust has made a tremendous amount of investment over the past 5 years on data infrastructure, large data capabilities, and advanced tools like Data Robot. The challenge will always be the information feeding those machines, the tools and techniques that are used to analyze and to make decisions. But the applications are limitless. So while we're talking about some very specific use cases, they're not limited at all to those use cases we talked about. To give you some ideas of that, the regression models, and help me with this. The regression models that were used to do Moneyball, I don't know if all of you guys saw Moneyball, the first use of statistics in baseball to manage baseball teams. Those are the same regression models we use for forecasting balance sheet activity, probability of default. The analytics that are used to determine portfolio optimization, or the machine learning that's used to, or the neural networks that are used to do machine learning, are the same models that we use for optimizing balance sheets, size, risk parameters. The techniques are what is important. The types of information you need to solve the problem are what's important. The particular use case is less relevant, because I promise you the problems you will work on the first year you get out of this program will be completely irrelevant to you 20 years into your career. The challenges you will face, the problems you will have to address, the tools that you will use, the languages, they won't exist in 20 years. They probably won't exist in 5 years after you graduate, but they probably won't exist in 20 years after you graduate. But the foundational capabilities, the thought process around what types of information do I need, what types of analytics do I need to apply, that is foundational to the success of you and your careers in the future. So while we talk about the risk and finance space and the capabilities that we provide for a bank to operate, or within the consumer bank, or within Robertson Humphrey and the client bank, or the investment bank, those are all capabilities being applied to a specific set of problems. I would say that once you can articulate the problem, the techniques that need to be applied to solve those problems are foundational. With that, I'll open it up to questions. I know some of you are probably ready to leave already.
So what if we get the whole SunTrust team up there? And I've got a couple questions I can ask from online.
And if I just ask,
Sure, yeah.
you asked a great question. The way that you think about companies and their ability to thrive and survive is oftentimes they have come up with the right use case, right? If you're a transportation company and you happen to make horse and buggies, you were smart enough to engage in combustion engine emerging technology to become a transportation company making cars. So I don't think it's the existential nature of the product that creates a success. I think it's how you think about yourself as a company. And in this instance, SunTrust defines itself as a purpose-driven company. And our job is to reduce your financial stress by allowing you a way to financial well-being. And if we think about that, then the products that we bring to market are going to be substantially different because we're going to be there at the point of transaction. We're going to not only make it easier to transact, we're going to let you know the transaction you made is actually a good one on the other side, right? So I think more broadly speaking than just a bank, that's how you generally differentiate the successful companies who've been here for a long time versus those that died, right? The nice thing when you show top 10 is that the 10 that survived, they don't show the 300 that did. So sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to pull a couple questions from online so everybody is participating here. One question is, so in this class I kind of take the easy way out and I say volatility is risk. But what are other ways? What are other sorts of risks, or how do you evaluate risks? And you're the head risk guy, so what's your answer?
Well, so first of all, I would say volatility is opportunity. So yes, it is risk, but it's the opposite end of it, right? So it's the other side of the coin. Risk is opportunity. Managing risk creates opportunity. The company that can bank you when no one else will bank you, if there's an opportunity to be made, those are the banks that will be profitable. So it's about using advanced analytics and information to manage the risk, not eliminate it, right? You can't eliminate risk, you have to manage it. But there's lots of kinds of risk. We manage all kinds of risk.
If I may add, the biggest risk, usually the folks who begin their career in data science make is data is a risk. That is because nobody has the perfect data. You collect a lot of data, but that is the saying, right? The companies measure only what they see, and they set all the goals. If I was a data scientist in 2008, many of you were probably little kids back then.
Was there anything such a thing as a data scientist?
Yeah, maybe.
We call it something else.
I'd say if I did analytics in 2008 and in Sony, and you come to me and ask, what kind of cameras I need to sell? So I do a lot of algorithms, run models, and say, okay, you need to sell like high definition cameras. 2008 is when iPhone came out, right? You need to do high definition cameras, put a lot of money in this geography and all that. Across the street from Sony, there was another company, zero market cap, like a startup. They were making crappy cameras where you could put it on your belt, hula hoop, wherever you want. Like their crappy camera would work. You could put it on your social network. What company is that? GoPro. No amount of data, our machine learning, can turn Sony to a GoPro, right? So we have to think about strategy as an overarching thing. The human mind can bring in a lot more things and make decisions. Data is an aid to all those. So if you bring both of those, I think the risk is going with one or the other, bringing them together. That's where it's at.
Yeah, and in fact, if I could add to that, the biggest challenge you're going to face in your careers is access to the information you need to do the analysis. It's not the analytics techniques, it's not the software, it's not that. It's going to be, do you have access to the information you need to build the model? And can you get it in it? And when you built the model, can you get that information in a timely enough way to make a difference? It's all fine and good if I have a perfect vision of you every month, once a month. But if you want to make a loan 3 days after I've got that perfect vision of you, it's useless to do. I need to know everything about you when you want to do something. And that's going to be a challenge.
So I'll answer. I'm the trader in the room. So when you tell me there's more volatility, what I'll tell you is all that means is a difference of opinion. So what is your core thesis? What are the analytics and data that you're using to know that that core thesis is proving to be right or wrong? And how do you cut your losses, right? So increased volatility creates that opportunity, but it also makes you really think long and hard about the parameters that you're willing to take risk in and how to get out of a position. The number one problem with a trader that I will have for the last 25 years and the next 10 years I'm in the business, and hopefully I'm retired at that point, is traders who start to deviate their thesis from their position. Why they own something starts to change. That shouldn't happen. You should reset. And in a land of high vol, if you just put a trade on and it moves against you immediately, you did a lot of work to come up with putting the trade on. You got to be willing to throw it in the garbage and start over again.
I think we need to close now. However, I believe they're available still for a few more minutes.
Sure.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
let's thank them, and then if you have more questions, please come up here. Thanks.